Greetings, fellow Cretonians. Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of a new series playing Songs of Six. If you would like to skip the game's overview, the setup of this series, and the details about this series, please use YouTube chapters. Songs of Six is an epic city-state simulator set in a fantasy world where you start off as a tiny colony, and you can aspire and work towards becoming a great empire. The game is deep, complex, and engrossing, and full of pitfalls and dangers that can collapse societies. It feels a little bit like Dwarf Fortress, but on a more epic and grand scale, like if Dwarf Fortress and like SimCities had a love child or something like that. And in this stream, I'm going to be trying to thoughtfully architect a city-state. So I am playing the 0.66.49, which you can see in the top right corner version, with no mods, on a random game with normal difficulty and no added scripts. I'll explain what that means. So when you create a new game, you have difficulties here, and then you have scripts for like extra things that can happen, and well, just the default settings is what I'll be playing on. My starting species will be the Cretonians, and the goal of the stream is to build a successful and harmonious and self-reliant Cretonian city, and to showcase the game to the best of my abilities. This next part I think is important. I am relatively new to the game. I really only have a few dozen hours in preparation for this marathon. And this game, I would say, as far as complexity goes, is on the order of magnitude of like Dwarf Fortress or RimWorld for complexity. So if you can imagine only having a few dozen hours in RimWorld or Dwarf Fortress, yeah, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And with that said, I'm asking for that no backseating, because it's just going to be confusing and unnecessarily perplexing if I get backseated a lot for a game I don't know well. In preparation for the stream, normally when you create a new game, and I'll show you why I did it this way, you generate a random world, a procedurally generated world, and you have starting resources, and often it is very tricky to try to get the requisite resources that you want in your pre-generated world. So this is like one such pre-generated world. Up north is cold, down south is warm, in the middle is temperate, and then you have these strategic resource nodes here. You can, of course, edit the terrain, and something about editing terrain feels wrong to me. So what I did instead was just randomized a few worlds until I got one that I liked. So I'll be showing you the world that I chose. And all that I've done in this save file is pick the spot I wanted to settle. So this is the map tile that I will be settling. And it has, the reason I picked it, it has coal, it has iron, it has gems and ore and stone and clay, and then of course some waterfront. When you're picking a spot to initially settle, I generally like to pick somewhere where you can start farming. Think of like the Fertile Crescent, right? You know, you're not going to start civilization in a desert. That's just not reasonable. So I'm going to stick my starting building, which is your throne room, somewhere close to the shoreline. There is also overlay options here, which you can enable. So if I overlay fertility, for instance, as you can see, the ground is most fertile around the water. Fertility base is basically just fertility without the water table. So there's some fertile zones to the east that are not groundwatered. And maybe we make use of that in some later time. But yeah, let's get going. Let's turn off the overlays for now, because they're confusing, and I don't really need them at the moment. And stick our throne room down, let's say, here. So before I start, just to explain some of the UI so that new players are not lost, I'm going to whip through it quickly. Top left, you have your population, and the bar there is their happiness or loyalty. Happiness and loyalty are often one and the same. Next is slaves and nobles. We're not going to have any slaves. I've decided against it, and nobility comes in a lot later. Then you have workforce, and that number is how many free workers you have in your workforce. This is, of course, population, and then housing. So -10 means I have 10 homeless. Here we have how many are imprisoned, which comes in much later, because nobody's committed crimes. We have armies, again, much later. We have got sanitation, which is a health or disease. And then this is food. How much food you have stored. This is maybe one of the most important. Anyone that has played Song of Six knows. Food. Yes. An army marches on their stomachs, I think was famously said. If you run out of food, you're just dead. You're just dead. So keeping food above, let's say, more than a few months ahead, very important. Then you have time controls up here. One of the important things to point out is if you double tap 2, you go to quarter speed. And if you double tap 4, you go to times 250 speed. So there's a huge array of time controls. And then you have your season. And overlaid on your season is the temperature and the moisture, because sometimes there's cold snaps and heat waves, and people will die in cold snaps and heat waves unless it's managed well. This screen here breaks out your, I'm going to call it the leadership overlay, and I'm just turning the game down the last 5% I can. Maybe like that. I don't want to feel like I have to talk over it for 12 hours. So if you click this, you have all your goods, and whether you're importing or exporting them. And one of the things I want to do is a self-reliant Cretonian city, which means not really relying too much on imports. Treasury, we have no money. Tourists, we have no tourists. Research, this comes in a little bit later, but this is the research tree. And it is very important to manage, and also a bit of a noob trap. If you don't know what you're doing, you can waste a lot of time, resources, and effort researching the wrong things. Factions. So we have factions nearby, and we have 3 Dondorians, which are like dwarves, I guess, near us in adjacent map tiles. And I'll show you the world in a minute. This is the in-game tutorial stuff, which honestly just scratches at the surface and is incomplete, but it's better than nothing. And then status. I'm obviously going to want to change my name here. I don't want to be Bob of Halissa, but as your population grows, you unlock abilities. You unlock, like guard stations and embassies and administration. You have titles of things you have unlocked, and boosts, which is the result of often research and administration and things of that nature. This is our flag. So our faction name will be the Nation of Kadath, and our ruler name is Talanist. So both Kadath and Talanist, my Patreon patrons, suggested this game to play for this month, and well, they get to be the flag. Let's give this a nice Twitch purple-ish, as close as I can get, with a foreground even deeper purple. I guess that's blue. I don't know. I'm bad at this. And the border of white. Cool. That'll work. Give it like a nice flag there. I like it. Okay. Save. Next screen, world logs, which is things that happen in the world. Nothing has happened in the world yet because the game is paused and I haven't done anything yet. And then message logs, which would be messages from like local rulers and the like. We are right now in the capital screen. There is a battle screen if you're being attacked in your home tile. And then there is the world screen. So this is the world that we generated here. And I am right here. It's the Nat, and we have 3 Dondorians around us. Cretonians are like, They're kind of like pigskins in RimWorld, but they are peaceful and farm-loving and food-obsessed. All right. On the right side of the screen is your stockpiles of stuff, and then your species. And here is the Cretonians. So a little bit about the Cretonians. They excel at farming and thrive in temperate and warm climates, preferably close to water. They are vegetarians and prefer harmony and wooden structures. And that's really all you really need to know about them initially. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is to build a warehouse for the stuff that we came in with, that we started with. And the reason for this, man, I feel like the wind in the game is just like absolutely... There we go. That's much better. So if you mouse over, like, let's say grain that is not stored will spoil at about 25% of it destroyed per year. But if stored, it's only 12.5. Generally speaking, storing things help preserve it twice as much as leaving it out. And some things are guaranteed to spoil if left out, like, let's say, bread. If you leave bread out, all of it will spoil. So it's very important to keep things in warehouses. I like to place sort of like a general warehouse pretty close to the throne room, so it's quick to build. And that would be in the logistics screen here. Now, there's a bunch of different ways to get through the buildings here. One way is Control F, where you just go, hey, I want a warehouse. And then you just type and filter. But I generally use this bottom screen. So, the Cretonians like wooden structures. So let's make this out of wood. And the Cretonians also like their buildings to be round, or round-like. There's an overlay for it. Roundness, and right now there's nothing on this map tile that is round, and being around things that look round make them happy. So I'm going to be designing a city that is kind of roundish, I guess. So this is the throne room. Very important to not let this get destroyed and to not break access to it. Essentially, your civilization runs only when you have a throne room intact. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to set up a little warehouse here. Right here. And I'm going to make it like a 7x7. Now, a warehouse alone isn't enough. We're going to want crates in the warehouse. If you hold left control and use mouse wheel, you can change how large the crates are. So you could place individually sized crates like this, and I have now gotten about 650 storage out of it. Here, let me hide my overlay just so you can see it exactly. Right, 648. If you use the mouse wheel option, you can get a lot more packed in. So there's 1,600 in storage instead of 600. So 1,000 more. And I'll stick a door, which is this icon here, on the top and bottom of this little warehouse. There is a shape option to immediately have it rounded. I don't like that option. So if I create a new warehouse, I'll show you what you're asking about. So here is the shapes of the buildings where we can have it be, you know, ellipsis or sort of oval. Well, not that. Here, let me right click and get rid of that. That was the brush. So this would be like an ellipse shaped. And the reason I don't build like this is it doesn't use area all that well, which early on, obviously, doesn't matter that much. But in late game, you only have as many square meters of territory on your home tile as you have. And wasting it with inefficient shapes, you're going to run into problems where you either have to raise your entire city to build it smarter later, or something like that. So I'm going to pause and let my 10 odd jobbers, which is people without specific professions, my 10 odd jobbers build this warehouse. And I'm also going to go to the jobs fell tree and cut some of the local trees down. So after they build the warehouse, one of the next things I'm going to want to do is to build them a longhouse for them to live in, a hearth for them to warm up in, a well for them to cool down in, and then start to forage stuff. So foraging happens in late summer, and right now it is early spring, but like time flies in this game. So I'm gonna hit the forage here. And I want to forage wild grains. And if we zoom all the way out, we can see all the strategic resources. So there's wild grains here. There's also a tiny bit of wild grains here. There's apples, and vegetables. So forage the apples, the other apples, and the vegetables. On my first year, I'm really only concerned about food. I don't really... Oh, and let's also look at the mushrooms. I don't care about the opiates, which is for medicine. I don't care about the cotton, which is for tailoring. I don't care about the herbs, which is not even something that the Cretonians, or Cretonians rather, will care about. Like, ever, more or less, unless you want to export it. And it's going to be really important for me not to have the odd jobbers saddled with a whole bunch of work right at the start of the foraging season. All right, in order to make this little building a little bit more rotund, I'm going to give it some little extra distinctions like this. And you're going to see me use this style of building, which almost looks like a star fort, often. Just because I like the aesthetics and it will fulfill the requirements. So that is what I'm doing. Cool. So we have the starting warehouse, and then we have the dirt road that feeds into it. This is, of course, our throne, our seat of power. Don't lose it. Don't get cut off from your citizens. So, like, for instance, if I built a wall here, the throne would stop working. Everyone needs access to the throne in order for administration to work. So, let's then think ahead. One of the first things we're going to want to do is to use the foraged grain to make bread, and then use the foraged apples to make orchards. But on year one, we're just going to be eating those grain and apples. We're really only going to start farming in earnest maybe year 2 or so. It depends. It really depends on a lot of factors, but mostly starvation is the biggest factor. So, taking a look at the fertility overlay. So, there is... Fertility base is your base fertility without water. So, like, areas over here, if they were irrigated, would be very high yield. But we aren't going to be able to irrigate anything for a bit, because I don't have the technology to do that. So parts of the southeast of the map might be worth irrigating later on. But for now, I'm just going to plan my farms around the water. So you can build on the shallow water, which is this lighter blue. The darker blue, you cannot, you can build roads on and things like that, but you can't put farms there because it's deep water. And it looks like this area here has, it's got a good water table. It's fertile enough. So I'm going to start my farms in this area once the projects are done. But I don't want to queue up large projects right now, because if I queued up a really large project, my free jobbers would not be free in order to do the foraging. Now, in terms of other strategic resources, we have got trees, which are these, green things. If you couldn't tell that they're a tree, they're a tree. You don't need to cut down a whole lot of trees for wood. Like a small swath of trees is enough for quite a lot of buildings. And then you have stone. So there's like rock on the ground here, and if we open up the resources overlay, you can also see that way up here has the potential of a stone mine, a potential of an ore mine, a coal mine, a gem mine, and then we also have coal and ore up this way as well as gem and Sithalon ore. Sithalon ore is like it's like this game's like emerald or something. It's not like functionally useful, but it's coveted, is maybe a good way to put it. So the current priority right now is build basic shelter. Now, I am not going to be grand planning the layout of this entire city by placing the first house. You can go to the planning tool and plan, like, you know, grand shelters and the like. One tool that a lot of people use is they'll build like neighborhoods and then copy and paste the neighborhoods to make it easy to expand their cities. And I'll probably do something like that because it allows us to play a little bit more quickly and to scale. All right, I am going to cancel the jobs here so they don't cut down more trees, so they focus more on the warehouse construction. Because really early game, if you misstep, you lose. Luckily, you don't lose a lot of progress because we just started, but not good to lose this early on if you can help it. And here they are, relaxing in the throne room because it's their leisure time. And each individual will have their own stats. So, for instance, this individual has their own needs, like they want houses, access to wells. They don't have an actual job, so they feel useless. They don't have access to taverns. They don't have clothing. They don't have armor. They don't have weapons. You know. And yeah, their Cretonians are, they're not lookers. A lot of them are, sometimes they're like, yeah, there's a good example. Hideously ugly. But, you know, just, eye of the beholder, I guess. Alright, so the external structure of the warehouse is now built. And they're using wood to construct the insides, because it is a wooden building. That's what the Cretonians like. So, pretty much everything that I build is going to be made of wood as a result. And once this is built, we will allot room in there for the grain and the livestock and the rations and the stone and wood, and then also everything that we intend to forage up, because once we forage things in the fields, we're not going to want to leave them out because they'll rot. And a lot of these odd jobbers are just like sleeping in wherever they can because they don't have a home yet. No one does. So other strategic resources that we're going to want early on. Clay is pretty useful for pottery, which is needed for running breweries and the like. And then ore and coal. You don't need coal. You can always make charcoal from timber, but having coal is pretty handy. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to pause the game. And we have built the warehouse. So if we click on those warehouse, I'm going to rename this one General Warehouse 1. There's a lot of buttons going on here, so let me explain some of the more important ones. One is you can hit this button to let the AI to adjust how many people should work in the warehouse, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. And then radius. So right now, this warehouse will only anyone working this warehouse will only scoop up things within the illuminated tiles. And I want to increase the radius so that even the vegetables way down south are going to get placed in the warehouse. So I'm going to increase the radius up to 22, I think. Oh, even more, because I am not grabbing the cotton. There we go. So 31. So this warehouse will now serve most of the southern part of the map. It's to say that this warehouse won't be particularly efficient because the delivery man working in the warehouse will have to travel a very long distance, but there is really no substitute for that right now. Then, yeah, you have your workforce, you have your delivery. If you want to pull from sources, so let's say I had a smaller warehouse for like apples here, and I wanted to store my apples in a central warehouse, I could pull resources from the small warehouse to the main one. Your warehouse has upgrades. This upgrade, for instance, costs furniture. And in upgrading your warehouse, it will increase the total amount of storage, and it can be upgraded twice. And then the other thing that we're going to want is to specify what to store in this warehouse. So I'm going to store 2 units of grain. I'm going to store 2 units of cotton, 2 of apples, or 3, let's say 3 of apples, 2 of vegetables, 1 ration, 2 of meat, 2 of leather, 1 of livestock, 1 of stone, and 1 of wood. Actually, let's do 2 of stone, 2 of wood, because this is a big warehouse. Then anything else that I think I'm going to interact with early on. So we want mushrooms. And then the warehouse is full. So if I wanted to add other goods, like let's say furniture, which we'll get pretty early on, or bread, which we'll get pretty early on, I'm going to want a second warehouse or to decrease the amount of storage capacity here. All right, let's go ahead and set up just a basic house. So there's 3 types of houses. There is the apartments, the long houses, the regular houses. I like to make my cities out of the smallest long houses. You can, of course, like, make mega long houses, and I don't. Like, I don't build my cities with, like, giant, you know, brutalist-style residential blocks. I just don't like the look of it, and it doesn't feel particularly Cretonian. With that said, I'm going to be setting up the initial longhouses without the concept of what the grander scheme of things will be. And that is simply because I want to be building these out of pure convenience. Essentially just like throwing them together so that people aren't homeless on year 1. So there's a little longhouse. Bring the roads down to it. And then in this longhouse, or near this longhouse, I'm going to set up a hearth, which helps to keep you warm during cold snaps, and a well, which is the inverse for heat waves. And then just put a little road around it, like that. And that's it. That's all they're going to really want for now. Because we are already heading towards the summer, and I want to make sure that I am not oversaddling my odd jobbers with too many tasks, so they can do the foraging that I require. And here, the delivery man is now grabbing things from the throne room and putting them in the general warehouse, which will then read that I have things stored here. So with like the grain in here, you know, it's not going to spoil at 1/4 of all my grain per year. Which is very nice to not waste that much grain. I'm going to keep tinkering with this. Ooh, too loud. So up here, you can see my workforce is 9, because 1 person is a permanent delivery man, and the other 9 are odd jobbers. Odd jobbers are just people that will, you know, build or harvest, do random odd job tasks around your colony, but don't have a workplace. I'm also going to, because it's cheap, build a simple place of worship. And I'll place it right there. Again, or actually, maybe not there. So there's 4 different shrines. And if we take a look at the Cretonians, they have certain beliefs. So they believe in mostly craterism, which is one of the gods, and then a tiny bit of authorism, but like no one of my starting 10 believes in authorism. They all are Cretorists or whatever, which actually makes my job really easy. But generally, it's like a 93-7 split or something like that. Which means I just need a shrine to crater to keep them happy. So I'll just stick a shrine to crater here. And the house is getting constructed. It might need some more wood, so I'm going to queue up some felled trees for the rest of the trees that are in this area. Because yes, this is the icon for lacking material, so I was out of wood. And now the odd jobbers are cutting down trees so that we can continue construction. And I'll fell a few more trees over here too. So much bleeding out of you guys. So there's also animals on the map tile. Maybe now is a good time to talk about it. So we have the, and excuse my mispronunciation of these, like, animals, but the entelodonts, which are like giant boar pig things. A lot of meat and leather on them. Then we have the onks, which is meat and textile. We have the dineris, which is meat and eggs. Over here, we got these little lizards things, the globdian. Again, meat and eggs. Less eggs than the birds, but still, meat and eggs. Got these giant Baltic crawlers, or Baltic crawlers, which are huge bugs of meat. Then way down here, some aurochs. At least we know what those are. A lot of meat and fur, and they're kind of dangerous. Hunting them can result in you getting stampeded to death. And yeah, those are the animals on this current map tile. And there is ranching in the game, which is a really good way to have an income of meat, fur, leather, livestock, etc. And we'll be setting that up at some point. So we're almost into summer now. As you can see, summer's rolling around. And at the end of the summer is when we're going to be doing all the foraging. So we're going to want to make sure that our people don't have a bunch of odd job tasks heading into the summer, so that they're freed up. These little icons are where your alerts are. So this is just like I've constructed a room, and it's telling me that the general warehouse here got built. And it's about to tell me that the house is going to get built, so you'll see another pop up here. And the same will be true of the well, the hearth, the shrine. Alright, this is built. So there's our little longhouse where all 10 of the odd jobbers that we started with will live in. And if you hold left control and click on it, you can just build a copy of it. And that's true of like roads or walls, literally everything you can just copy and paste. Which is very nice when you're trying to grow in scale. So there's our hearth. And people will sit around the hearth. The hearth has a certain amount of service, like how many people can sit around it at a given time. And often you will need to build more hearths and wells as your population goes up, because, you know, especially if you have a cold snap, if you have everyone sitting at a hearth and not enough room for everyone, then you end up with people that are freezing. With that said, you can also negate some of those when you give your people clothing. So once they start making clothing, you can layer clothing up to 4 layers, and the more clothing that you wear, the more protected you are from the elements. That is also of the heat. So clothing will protect you from both heat waves and cold snaps. But currently, I don't have clothing, so if we take a look at any one individual here, as you can see, clothing 0. but when mousing over the clothing, you can see that it offers heat and cold resistance. Primarily cold, but heat as well. And this species likes warm, so they're far less susceptible, I think, to heat waves and heat strokes than to hypothermia and death from getting too cold. So now they're building their shrine and the well. And if you mouse over their icons here, it will tell you what they want. So right now they're asking for better access to a shrine of my religion. They want access to wells. They want jobs and a tavern. A tavern is what people would call a noob trap. Trying to offer booze early on is very expensive, where you sink a lot of resources into it. And if you sink resources into it and you're not spending those resources in trying to feed your people, you can end up in a situation where you starve yourself to death. Because right now I only have 2 months of food, which is why the foraging that I keep talking about is so important. Because I can hunt, but if you hunt everything on the map tile, you hunt it into extinction. If you kill all the animals on the map tile, well, you're done. There's no more animals. You'll have to, like, import them or whatever. So it's not wise to do that. What oh, one of the sheep died here. It's a random cadaver. There is one way to get meat early on. Now, of course, Cretonians are vegetarian. They do eat meat if they have to, but they don't prefer it. And that would be the hunter. So you can set up a hunter. And the way the hunter works, unlike a lot of the other games like this, is they leave the map tile to do hunting elsewhere. So you would build the hunter typically like on the edge of the map, and then build like houses and a well and a hearth near it and a warehouse for meat. And then hunters would leave the map tile, do their hunting, and bring back meat. I'm not gonna do hunting just because Cretonians are vegetarian. Why obtain my my food that way? It doesn't really make that much sense for role-playing reasons. I just wanted to point out that you can hunt. Now, hunting doesn't scale up. Essentially, there is finite space around your nation to hunt. So you can't just build a whole bunch of hunters to keep yourself supplied with meat. It does cap out. So it's important to obtain your meat through ranching if you want to be a meat-based diet. And there's also fish. Can you overfish? No. It's also, I think this is the case where, like, where the fish is in the map tile for the fishery. So you can see this little fish icon is where the fish is. Sometimes your fish is, like, in the ground. So I'm gonna pause just to explain this, because that probably just, you were like, what the hell? Your game has a water table. So this is my groundwater. And in a lot of cases, your groundwater also happens to be on land. So if you dig out the land, sometimes it can expose fish for better fisheries, even where there wasn't water to start. I'm probably not going to do that. Again, Cretonians are vegetarians, so I'm going to be mostly agrarian. But just to say that that is possible. Oh, the Yoda cam it broke. Let me fix that. Here he is. All right, we are the first day of summer, the year of the first age. The shrine to Crater is all supplied and getting built. I am building this second longhouse. Most of your population growth is going to be a result of immigration rather than breeding. You can breed, but immigration's pretty much where it's at. And I am going to build an extra house for our first set of immigrants soon. So unlike hunting, where you can manually hunt the critters on the map tile, you can't, like, manually fish the critters on the map tile, which means you can't overfish. to further answer your question. All right. What do I import versus making locally? I import nothing, so everything is local. And here's the shrine. The odd jobbers are getting it built, and then the well. Thank you for tuning in to Songs of Six, which originally streamed live on Twitch as a marathon November 23rd. If you have any questions for me, let me know in the comments below, but please keep in mind I'm not looking for feedback. This episode was cut from a marathon, and the marathon was streamed one time only, so feedback cannot be incorporated. If you would like to join a live stream of mine, Rhadamant.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams. And if you would like to join my online gaming community on Discord, Rhadamant.com has a link to it, as does the description of this video. A link to my Patreon page can be found there as well, if that interests you. Thank you so very much for watching. A special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. I hope to catch you next episode or an upcoming stream of another game. Farewell, my fellow Cretonians.